You're saying nothing, and I'm entitled to make the point that that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life.
You both made your points. Let me bring it. Okay, time out. Let's bring in Jillian.
So Joe Walsh, who's a former Republican congressman who actually ran for president, if you can believe it, has Trump derangement syndrome to the fullest effect. And in this one, he goes off and calls Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset. And Dave Smith completely schools him, destroys him directly to his face. It's glorious. And even show favorite Vinny from the Patrick Bet David podcast, the PBD podcast, I guess I should say, gets a couple licks in as well. So, and as this video plays, you could really help me out by hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. Now let's get it started.
Well, I mean, I think that essentially the picks who the corporate media are freaking out about are the best picks that Trump's made. Personally, I'm not too happy with a lot of his foreign policy picks. But I think having Tulsi as DNI and Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General and Bobby Kennedy at the Health Department, these are the best picks that Trump's made. And of course, in the upside down world that we live in, the corporate media, the professional lying class, the people who told you that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack and Kamala Harris was joy and a phenomenon, and Tony Hinchcliffe was a speaker at an event making a comment, and there was a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden, and the list goes on and on and on and on. That's just in the last few months. Yeah, of course, they're all freaking out about this. I think what's really going on here is that Donald Trump has quite craftily put a person in charge of national intelligence and a person in charge of the Justice Department, assuming they get confirmed, who were outside of the Russiagate hoax. And this is what's making everybody freak out right now. You know, so many things happen in modern America. There's so many big stories that we kind of forget that a few years ago, there was this little tiny story where the intelligence agencies framed the sitting president for treason for years and had their corporate media outlets say that the sitting president, the biggest scandal, if true, in the history of the United States of America, that sitting president was involved with a hostile foreign power in a conspiracy to overthrow our elections. They knew this was not true. They lied. And now their bosses are not only people who were outside of this conspiracy, but in Tulsi Gabbard's example, someone who was also smeared with that same accusation. As you saw, Joy Reid, as you played, just did the same thing again. And I'll say, I'm sorry, I don't want to go too long here. I'll just say this. It is the most vicious, dishonest, despicable smear to use this innuendo where you say, you know, Putin, Russia's thrilled that Tulsi Gabbard's in there. And it kind of leaves the viewer with this like implicit accusation that this woman who served her country is a traitor to her country, when that means nothing. Look, in 2002, if you opposed the war in Iraq, Saddam Hussein probably would have been happy to see you in there. But that doesn't mean you're a traitor to your country. That just meant that in 2002, you were right while the entire establishment was wrong.
Some really excellent points made there by Dave Smith, and I like how he worded that Saddam Hussein little tidbit. Now let's get into the heated part of the debate.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is among President Trump's controversial picks. The incoming Director of National Intelligence spoke to Jesse Waters at Fox News.
He's already leading. He's already engaging with so many of these world leaders around the world on the phone constantly. And he's showing the kind of leadership that the American people voted for.
We're joined the panel now as the host of The Social Contract, former Republican presidential candidate and Congressman Joe Walsh, who says that Gabbard is a Putin cheerleader. Well, Joe, welcome back to Uncensored. Do you think she's a total disaster? Why?
You can't trust her. This country cannot trust her with our intelligence. If I'm one of our allies, there's no way if she's appointed, I'm sharing my intelligence with America. Look, I've said before, she's at best a Putin cheerleader. At worst, she's a Putin asset. For the past decade, she has done nothing but defend Vladimir Putin and parrot Putin and Russian propaganda. I mean, again, there's a list. I could take 30 minutes and go through the list. That's a humongous concern. She's not on our side. She's clearly on Russia's side.
She literally fought for America. She served her country and fought for America. How can you say she's not on our side?
She's still up here. She's still in the military. She's still in the military. Joe, first of all, this is the guy that says he's not you're not a Democrat. I remember this guy who was on the PPD podcast. You are exactly the problem that, listen to me, I want you to keep talking the way that you're talking, because of people like you, it's gonna, hey, excuse me, you know what, let me finish. Because of people like you, and your rhetoric, you know what's going to happen? J.D. Vance is going to be the president next. Tulsi Gabbard is going to be the president. Eric Trump's going to be the president. We are going to keep having Republican presidents because of people like you still talking Russia shit, Joe. Get over it. It's over. You're talking about an active military girl. She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and you're saying she's an asset. You're an idiot. Yes. You're an idiot. And people are tired of your bullshit.
Okay, let him respond. Vinny,
change the record.
Let him respond, Vinny.
Do me a favor,
change the record, bro.
Instead of attacking me, attack what I said about Tulsi Gabbard. For a decade,
she's a Russian asset.
Done nothing but ferret Putin. Address that. Address that.
But but Joe, I will address that.
I'll address that very
I'm going to come
quickly.
to. Hang on. I'm going to come to Gillian in a second. All I would say, Joe, is I get an email each week from Ian Bremner, one of the guys I most respect in the political world. He's very balanced. Gives very insightful weekly emails about what's going on in the news. He said he's seen absolutely no evidence that she has ever been anything even approaching a Russian asset. It's a total myth of the Democrat side to suggest she ever has.
Joe Walsh is just repeating left-wing mainstream media rhetoric because Tulsi Gabbard completely destroyed Kamala Harris in that debate back in 2020 when both were trying to actually be the presidential candidate the year that Joe Biden ended up winning the election. And you know how it is on the left. Once you question the authority, you're basically kicked out. And that's why Tulsi Gabbard finds herself where she is right now, because the left turned on her. And, in typical, Republican America First fashion, Donald Trump has accepted her. The Republicans have accepted her, even though she's not perfect. We don't believe, or at least I don't agree with all of her positions, even though she's coming around on some of the things that relate to her opinions on Second Amendment. But it just goes to show that the rhetoric from the left-wing mainstream media brainwashes people like Joe Walsh to believe even today that Tulsi Gabbard is somehow a Russian asset. That was a lie made up, and now he still believes it. And we see the lies made up by the left-wing media essentially affecting a lot of people today ever since Donald Trump won this election. It's glorious that Donald Trump won, but at the same time, it's, I feel bad for these people. They've been tricked, and now they're struggling with it. They literally are suffering a brain injury now.
You're going to ignore 10 years of what she said?
Well, she's allowed to have she's allowed to have an opinion.
Of course she is.
Well, hang on, she's allowed to have an opinion about Ukraine. She can have an opinion about Ukraine.
No, of course she is.
You may not agree with that opinion, and by the way, I don't agree with her opinion about Ukraine, but she's allowed to have it. It doesn't make her a Russian asset.
No, Pierce, exactly. She's allowed to have her opinion. Donald Trump has picked her to head up all our intelligence efforts in this country.
Yeah, but there is no evidence that she would be a threat to leaking that intelligence to Russia. It's a myth.
Not at all.
All right, let me go to Gillian.
She's a dupe or an asset because everything she's done the past 10 years and said has been exactly what Russia would want her to say or do. So she's either an asset or a dupe.
That's the dumbest standard ever. Who cares? If I said Saddam Hussein doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, that might be exactly what Saddam Hussein wants me to say. That doesn't mean anything. You see, Pierce, this is the trick here. And I'm sorry, I know you want to go to Julian, but the trick is that the same way they used to say Trump-Russia collusion, they wouldn't say Donald Trump's in a conspiracy with the Russians. You see, because that's actually meets the criminal code. And then so you just say collusion because what does that even mean? They could have had a phone call. call. Okay, they're colluding, but that's totally legal. So when you say she's a Russian asset, you give this wink and a nod like she's a traitor, when what it means, and Pierce, you disagree with me on this topic too, but listen, the argument is that there were 1 million off-ramps to the war in Ukraine, and that the West chose to not take any of them, and that this war could have been avoided, and it could have been negotiated away. Now, the idea that if someone makes this argument, your counter to that is to say that you're a Putin asset. This is so, first off, it's just despicable, and it's profoundly stupid. It makes absolutely no sense at all. But listen, at least during the original McCarthyism period, at least during the House Committee on American Activities, at least back then, there were some communists. Nobody is loyal to Vladimir Putin. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
You're entitled. No, Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is entitled to her opinion as a citizen of this country. But if for 10 years your opinion is identical to Russian propaganda, we are entitled to question that. And someone like that,
you're saying nothing, and I'm entitled to make the point that that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life.
You both made your points. Let me bring it. Okay. Okay. Time out. Let's bring in Jillian.
Oh man, Dave Smith cooked right there. I love it. You know, I wasn't a fan of this guy at first because, well, when I first discovered him, I should say. But man, I've come around. This dude is smart. He's funny, and he knows his history. It's actually rather impressive. And I want to go back to when Vinny and Joe Walsh were going at it, and Joe Walsh says, "Quit attacking me. Attack the words that I said." You know what? The time for that is over. It's time to shame these people. It's time to call their ideas stupid. It's time to, you know, take the sugar coating off and just be blunt to these idiots, because it's always the Republicans that take the high road, in my opinion. The lefties are willing to do, say, lie, do whatever it takes to try to win an argument, win an election, win an opinion, you know, and that's how the cult operates. And so, you know, the time of being nice, the time of sugarcoating, the time for all of that type of stuff has passed. They've had their opportunity. It's been 8 years since they've been on the attack against Donald Trump supporters, and now they're basically trying to dig their heels in deeper. And when they do, we just need to call them the stupid idiots that they are, really. I mean, there's no excuse for giving them a pass. There's no excuse for turning the other cheek. These people hate us. They hate our president. Well, the president-elect, I should say. They hate Donald Trump, and there's no reason to give them the grace that they would not give you, right? It's time for these bad ideas, these bad actors to realize that they are on the wrong side of history. Donald Trump won the majority popular vote, and so the majority of the voting country has decided that we're done with their nonsense. And so I love this. This was excellent to me. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. That's what helps out the most. And I also, before I go, I want to let you know I go live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern time on this channel. It's called the Jar Openers Podcast, and I'd love to see you there. But if not, make sure you stop in to the next video. You won't want to miss it.